kind of skimpy today. So we'll probably get done with our meeting pretty quickly unless there is discussion that you want to bring up and talk about. The information from LibLine this week is a little bit more than it has been over the past few meetings that we've had. I heard Patrick told me this week that Bibliovation 6.00.13, the version that's now in your sandbox, will likely be moved to production early on next week. There were a couple of fixes that needed to be done in order to resolve some issues with self-checkout, and since that needs to be working, the decision at LibLine was made to go ahead and move it. I did send out last week an updated spreadsheet that included the fixes and enhancements and new features that were added into 6.0013. So hopefully you've had an opportunity to read that. If not, I would suggest doing so that you know which things you should be testing. The other piece of this is that next week, that within the next couple of weeks, there will be one more point release that will primarily be fixes, but there are a couple of enhancements, I believe, that Patrick said needed to have a little more work done on it. After that, this version of the software will be closed, and the only work done on this version going forward will be fixes to problems that have been submitted. At that point, Bibliovation 6.02 will be opened, and all new work will be going into that particular version. So Patrick identified the major new feature will be the beginnings of the addition of an ERM, and that's a e-resource management system. The feature will not be completely finished in version 6.02, but it will be started. And as it is added into the software, it will be available to all of you to use as well. Patrick is optimistically identifying a possible release date for 6.02 in late 2019 or early 2020. We'll see if that is something that occurs on that timeline. The move to Bibliovation 6.00 has, as you know, taken much longer than a normal release cycle is for a new version, but that is because of the code fusion work that has been done for the last couple of years. Patrick is confident that that is all that has been, that all of the code fusion issues have been resolved. He said this week, other than a few things that are still bugs that have been reported, that they will be looking into it. Laura, yes, it's not it's a government group that is backing this, but I don't know which government group it is. They evidently have need of such a program. The intent at this point, as far as I know, is that they will be using the Coral ERM as the basis of the ERM system. And I'm not sure how they're going to go about putting that in, but they are planning on building APIs so that they can get into, so that the data can flow from Bibliovation into Coral and vice versa. Along with this, another factor that Waldo is interested in is that with an ERM system, a lot of the data that is usually input into that system is data that already exists in the Waldo office. So all of your electronic subscriptions that you purchase through Waldo, that has all of the terms of agreement, the licensing information, any restrictions, any contracts, etc., that can all be populated, auto-populated from the Waldo system into the ERM. So that would, in the discussions that we have, it would enable everyone to implement this ERM in a much faster way than most independent libraries or in other consortium are able to do, because it's something that's going to be a lot easier for us. That, of course, won't include absolutely everything that you subscribe to, because I'm assuming that some of your subscriptions are direct with the provider of the service. Okay, there were a few people that joined either during or towards the end of that. The brief information in the agenda.
Becky, that's because you sent the wrong link in your email.
Oh, I did?
Yeah,
oh,
you sent the summer link.
I'm sorry, I didn't notice that. Okay. So
sorry.
Well, on that, thank you for telling me that.
Sure.
I had problems yesterday with the wiki, so tried to send everything out today quickly, and I guess in my haste to get things sent out, I copied the wrong thing. Okay, let's move on. I left the upgrade experiences, problems, bugs, sandbox, and or production on the agenda just to see if there was anything that has been happening at your site regarding the new version of the software that maybe you would like to bring up for discussion at this point. I've been reading through the support center tickets, and I noticed that there has been a lot of things that have actually been addressed and resolved. I noticed there were also a few things that hadn't had much activity on it from the LibLime side yet, and wondered if there was anything that you wanted me to follow up with LibLime about, so that we can get some answers from some of the different problems.
Yeah, I just sent an email about the continuing miss scans in checkout and check-in that are causing us all kinds of inventory problems.
Okay.
And, you know, they've never indicated that there's anything that they can do about it, but it is still happening where we scan the patron barcode and it just hangs there at the autocomplete with the patron's name there, but it's not actually in the checkout box. And so then the student worker scans the item to be checked out, and they hear the beep and they think everything's fine, and they send the person on their merry way with their multi-$100 laptop. And then we also have issues where people come up and they say, this is coming up saying that I've got overdues and I turned it in the same day. Well, yeah, you did, but when the check-in happened, all that happened was the worker heard a beep.
Mm-hmm. Is this the support center ticket that this is all linked to? Or is there another one?
Well, there's another one that's the Circ autocomplete off but on, which is my theory as to why this is happening. I have never gotten an answer from them as to why they insisted that should continue. Last version we were able to turn it off, and it actually was off.
Mm-hmm. Here it is. Okay. In this ticket, I did read that Mary had actually been able to reproduce it and had sent it to the programmers. So I guess at this point, I can ask if they've had this added to their biweekly sprints to make sure that it is getting addressed. And if it isn't, I'll ask if they can actually move it up so that it can get resolved.
Great, thanks.
Mm-hmm. I think I told you this already, but LibLine does have a scanner, and I think Patrick told me that it's at his desk. I'm not sure what he did. That's been a while. When this first came up, we talked about it, but that has been, I don't know if that's been used in any of their testing or not.
Yeah, it would be good if it were. If they could get some consistent results with that particular scanner, obviously we'd be perfectly happy to change models. It's not like scanners are very expensive, but
well, I'll ask Mary too, since she was the one who was handling that ticket, if she has a scanner and was using the scanner in her testing.
Great,
because
thanks.
that might actually make a difference.
Yeah. And okay. Obviously, since it's an intermittent problem, it's something that they need to do the scan over and over again. They can't just say, "Oh, well, scanned." That's great.
Yeah. Okay, so that's on my list of checking on. Does anybody else have anything that they want to talk about at this point? Like I said, I've noticed that for the most part, the support service requests that you're entering are being met, or at least being answered. There are a few that aren't, and I suspect it's because they're a little bit more intricate and possibly dealing with intermittent problems that are more difficult to analyze. So we'll go with that. I did notice that there was at least one support center ticket about viewing all of the library support center requests. So I thought maybe it might be worthwhile just to show you how you can get to them, or how I get to it anyway, how I see everybody's requests. And in the views panel that you should see when you open up the support center. Okay, Ben, thanks. The My Requests option is the one that you select when you want to look at your own option or your own support center requests. So if I click on this, it should change my view, but maybe it isn't going to. You'll notice that the header here says my account pending requests. If all that you see is this My Requests, there is a setting that they have to change on your profile, and they have to do it on their side because you need to have this My Accounts request. And like I said, I'm not sure why this is not changing. Okay, in the My View, when you go to the Home on your dashboard, this will reflect the support center requests that you yourself have entered into the system. And as you can see, there are 10 that are pending for me. When I go to requests, that does allow me to look at all of my own requests at one time. So if I click on all my requests, I should see all the ones that are closed, and then there are a few that are probably closer to the bottom of the list that are still open because they were enhancement ideas instead of support center issues that needed to be resolved. But to flip back to see everybody's, all I need to do is click on the My Accounts request, and I will get everyone's list. Now, the issue is that if you don't see this My Accounts request portion in this panel, enter a support center request and tell them that you're not seeing the My Accounts request. And everyone should have that option available to them. Are there people on the call today that still can't see all of the requests? Okay.
I can see them.
Okay, good. Okay, let's go back over here. In the last meeting with Patrick, he had mentioned that the new the new features / enhancements from other customers were basically caught up. I asked him what was in the queue for development, and he said presently they don't have any completed requests from customers other than a few little things from some of the other smaller customers. So I asked him if all of the things that had been requested by South Central and also by the federal government had been completed, and he said that for the most part they all have. And I asked him if I could share them with you so that you could see what other sites had been asking for. And I realized that you won't have time to read everything that is on the screen right now, but this is the list that Patrick supplied. I guess I should go to the top of the file. This is the list that Patrick supplied from the federal government for pieces that they asked to have done. And I'm glad that they have money to do things, because sometimes they need the same things that we do. Okay, the things that are on this list are ones that have been done and are supposed to be in version 6.00. So theoretically, these are already in the production database. So I thought that it'd be a good idea to show these to you. I don't know if these are working the way that they are described yet. I haven't tested each of them yet, but there's enhancements around facets that the federal government agency requested, some indexing options, and the indexing options do, I know, address some things that have puzzled everyone, and some people have wanted some of these other options available for a while, like the space/no space after or before values causes the indexing to be different. That one, like I said, I'm not sure if that one's there. I know that during the upgrade, everyone's databases were re-indexed. So if you find a situation where a space/no space gives different search results when you do your searches, and it obviously is different, I would suggest entering a support center request for it, because if this actually has been changed, it hasn't been changed correctly. There are a couple of other indexing options that are here. The one that I know that Waldorf libraries have asked for a long time have been so that the subject indexes include the entire heading, not just the 650A, so that you can see the whole topical entry rather than just the 650A. And again, that one I haven't identified, or I haven't tested, but that is something that would be relatively easy to test. And lastly, there were several items around labels that they asked to have added to. And I am not sure how many of you use the label printing capabilities within the software, but if you do use the labels, you might be interested in these. I've worked with St. Vladimir's on label printing and everything, and she did find differences in this version, but she said after she worked with it a while, it seemed to be working better. So that would work. Ben, I'm not sure if that's the case or not. I'm going to do some testing, find records that have colons and slashes, and see if I can search differently and if the indexes respond differently. But I'll let you know what I find out. Okay, so these are the issues that the federal government libraries, oh, hold it, I'm sorry, there's one more section here. The catalog editor. So there were some issues here. I'm not going to go through these one by one. What I will do is send out these lists to the Waldo support mailing list after we're done with this meeting, so that you will have these lists and you can read through them, try to understand them. And if you have any questions on whether or not these things are working appropriately, go ahead and send a support center request, because LibLime is the one that should know how these are really actually working. I'm interested in knowing what the questions are too, but we'll let LibLime do what they're supposed to do. As you can see, there are a lot of things in the cataloging editor that they wanted to have added. Okay, there's one other group that had some requests, and that was South Central. And the South Central list, there's about, I think there are, those should be already in production, Ben. That was, and I asked Patrick specifically about that this week. I said, so they're in the sandbox? He said, no, they should be in production because they are completed. So hopefully you won't have to go to the sandbox to do any checking on them. All of the items that South Central library system wanted to have added were actually identified over a year ago. So this list is a list from 2018. And a lot of these, when I read through these again, are things that have actually been done. So if you go through these, you should be able to find them. You may not have run across them already in your normal day-to-day things. When I initially looked at this list over a year ago, I did realize that most of these are things that are not necessarily issues that had come up from any of the Waldo libraries before, and that none of them that I could see would have any negative effect on any of the libraries. But I thought just to point out some of the additional things that may not have been evident from going through the release notes, that this list might provide some additional information. So again, I will send this list out in an email message with the other one so that you have this list. I did ask Patrick if I could share these, and he told me since they're all done, he didn't see that there was any reason why I couldn't share them. So that's why they are there, and that's why you will be getting them. Okay. So, and he told me other than the ERM that there's nothing right now in their development queue that they're working on. So in terms of the development portion, they are primarily working on the ERM and on bug fixes. So whatever issues you find, be sure to report them so that they can get fixed. Since they have basically right now only one big project to work on, it's something that we might want to take a look at our enhancement lists here that we have and see if there's any that we want to have them go ahead and do something with. So I did add in a couple from the last meeting that we had. And I think that if I recall correctly, Stephen, you said that this one about the routing status was not high on your list anymore and was something that probably could be withdrawn.
Yes. In fact, they're quite pleased with the way that the enumeration is working now.
Okay, great. Okay, so yes, and Jen, in addition to the ones that are kept up here, we had these down here, and I think there were a few of them that were with authorities, or a couple of them with authorities. And some of these we had agreed to hold off on because, partially because of the Code Fusion project, partially because we knew that other sites were interested in and was hoping that we could get people to join in on us. I'll ask John to bring this up again. Actually, I'll bring this up again with Patrick and John and find out if there is any interest that they know of in any of the other sites. John did ask if the authorities pieces were already identified, and I told him that there were some. So I will pass that on. I think I'm going to ask them, I'm going to go back to our original list of things that were to be done, because I know we just put a few things in here, and see if their previous estimates are ones that they still would agree on. I think one of the biggest problems on how they did the authorities is that they didn't, what it appears to me is that they didn't load them as MARC records per se. They loaded them in a JSON format rather than in the pure MARC format. And if they, I think that's one thing I'm going to pursue to find out if that's exactly what they did, and if not, find out why we can't do reports on the MARC data or on the authorities data like we can on the bibliographic data. Okay, so I think that between now and the end of the year, we'll try to focus a little bit more on the enhancements, because there is development money that we can spend, and I think that if there are things that we want to have done, we should get them in the queue and get started. I can't see any reason to not start on them. And through Patrick, we can get the authorities pieces in front of the federal libraries and see if they are willing to help on improving the authorities module as well. Okay, our next meeting is on November 7th, 2 weeks from today. And one thing that I would ask you all is if you have any ideas for what you want to have as content during these meetings, to just send me an email or send it to Waldo Support. And if there's a topic big enough, then maybe we can spend a little bit more time on it. The one idea that I had is possibly taking a little bit of time to look at the new system preferences. I know that it's been a long time since I've done anything about system preferences other than when we talked about the lost rewrite. And I know that most of the preferences are defaulted to specific values, so everything stays the same, but I wanted to take a look and see if there are any that might be useful for you that maybe you would consider changing the values. Is that something that you would all be interested in? Or some of you even? Okay. Okay, so that's what I will work on, and we will meet again in 2 weeks. And until then, have a pleasant fall. Thank you all for attending. The recording will be on YouTube, and I'll get this site updated so that you have the new link. Thank you all.
Thanks, Becky. Bye.
You're welcome. Bye.